Hi, I'm Ryan, and welcome to Haunted, a podcast where we retell scary stories some of you may know and some of you may not. I'm here with my sister Sarah,
Hi, hello.
and in this podcast we're going to be telling the story of Betsy Bell of the haunted dell, which Sarah is completely terrified of, and trying to convince her to cover the story was extremely difficult.
It's definitely a feat, I'll say that, because I have been told this story many, many different times, many different ways since I was a little girl, and I can't explain the amount of fear I get from it. I mean, I'm 30 years old and I'm still scared of this story. So if that lets you know a little detail, and before we even tell the story, I just get so nervous. I won't even say the name of it because I just get so anxious, but I will for you guys during this story. So
yeah, and when I brought up the idea of covering this story for our first one, she actually got so terrified she wouldn't even talk about it. So.
Yeah, it's just you'll understand once we start getting into the story as to why I'm so scared of it. And honestly, it's a local story. We live here in Middle Tennessee. This is a very local story. It can just, it hits, as they say, very close to home. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very much close to home.
Yeah, definitely. Let's get into it. John Bell, a farmer from North Carolina, along with his wife and children, settled in northern Robertson County, Tennessee in 1804. Their farm consisted of 320 acres of rich farmland that laid along the Red River, which I've also Google mapped the Red River, and it is quite spooky. So they lived a quite peaceful life here for the first 13 years. They were members of the Red River Baptist Church, where John became a deacon. In the late summer of 1817, something would happen that would change their lives forever. Some members of the family began seeing strange-looking animals around the property. So when they're talking about these strange-looking animals around the property, Ryan, what?
Yeah, there were two-headed dogs, and one was a rabbit dog.
Mm-hmm. A rabbit with a
dog.
Yeah, with a dog's body, I guess.
And then a giant bird that was abnormally large than normal.
Which we've both watched a lot of paranormal shows and heard a lot about the paranormal, and we would probably refer to that as a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
So some shapeshifters were being seen around the property.
Yeah.
Then late at night, they started hearing knocking sounds on the doors and outer walls of the house. Sounds of a rat gnawing on the bedpost, chains being dragged through the house, stones being dropped on the wooden floors, then gulping and choking sounds.
Yeah, which is really terrifying if you think about it, because stones being dropped and chains being dragged and stuff like that is pretty super scary sounding.
I mean, definitely paranormal. If you're sleeping and you're woken up by that, and obviously you're not in a place where that would just be happening randomly.
Yeah.
That's going to be very scary.
Yeah, especially if you live out in the woods, especially back in the day like this, that would be utterly terrifying.
Yeah, for sure. The family was terrified, but kept the problem to themselves for over a year. When things became intolerable, John confided in a neighbor, James Johnson. He invited Mr. and Mrs. Johnson to spend the night. After several nights of witnessing these strange things, Mr. Johnson suggested that more people should be told, and a committee was formed and an investigation was started. It was not long before people were coming from miles around to hear and witness this unseen force that was terrorizing the Bell home. Before long, this unseen force had gained enough strength that it now had a voice. When asked who and what it was, it gave different identities. It once stated that it was the neighbor woman named Kate Batts. This is what many people believed, and from then on, this unseen force was called Kate, the Bell's witch. It seemed that Kate had two main reasons for visiting the Bell home. The main one was to kill John Bell. For what reason, no one knows, because Kate never gave a reason why. The second reason was to stop John's youngest daughter, Betsy, from marrying a certain neighbor boy named Joshua Gardner. So I wanted to say really quick that a lot of the other stories about the Bell Witch was saying that she had feelings or possibly a relationship with Joshua Gardner, to where she wanted to keep Betsy from having a relationship, so she was sabotaging, essentially. Over the next 3 years, Kate tormented members of the Bell family almost daily. John and his daughter Betsy were the ones who received the worst of the physical abuse. Betsy had her hair pulled, she was pinched, scratched, stuck with pins, and even beaten, while John Bell began suffering from spells of swelling of the throat and often had the feeling of a stick being stuck sideways in his throat. Then came the twitching and the jerking of the facial muscles. Kate would blast him with curses and hideous threats during these spells. As time went on, John Bell became weaker and weaker. Kate was becoming well known and drew large crowds of people. She seemed to be very intelligent in many things: the Bible, people's past, and the future. She could be in two places at the same time, miles apart from each other. She, Kate, finally accomplished her mission for coming to the Bell farm. On December 20th, 1820, John Bell had finally died. It was believed that he was poisoned by Kate, and Kate took full credit for his death. And then in March 1821, young Betsy broke off her engagement with Joshua Gardner. Kate then bid everyone farewell and promised to return in 7 years. She did not return in 1828 for a few short weeks. During this visit, she came to the home of John Bell Jr. and had long talks with him about the past, the present, and the future. She made some predictions for the future. Kate also said there was a reason for John Bell's death. However, she never said what the reason was. After the second visit, she said her next return would be in 107 years. That would have been in 1935. But some believe that she never left the area at all due to strange things that have occurred in and around the town of Adams, Tennessee, and the Bell Witch Cave over many, many years. The legend of the Bell Witch is feared and still told today. So there's a lot of different versions of this story. A lot of varieties have been told through the years. Some people think that it was the neighbor, Kate Batts. Not necessarily that she was a witch, but that she was seeking vengeance on the Bell family. I think one story says for taking her property, also for Betsy dating Joshua Gardner. There's many things. And then there's also a version that tells of the Indian burial ground.
Oh, yeah.
That's in the Bell Witch Cave. Because on the land, there's the Red River, there's the John Bell Jr.'s house, and then there's also the Bell Witch Cave, which is where the Indian burial ground that was, like, desecrated is at.
Oh, okay.
So that's why when they say when you go to the Bell Witch Cave and you walk through it, you can hear, obviously, water dripping. You can also hear what they say is possibly Kate Batts' voice.
Also, I've heard somewhere before they said something about sometimes you can hear like Indian chanting.
Yeah, I think
dancing, like ceremonial stuff.
Which I think is they were doing, from other stories that were told, they were doing Indian rituals with burials, ceremonies, things like that, which would like reflect that sound.
Yeah.
They also apparently...
There's also the falls, the Bell Witch Falls. So usually Indians also felt very strongly about water giving power to spiritual stuff. And so having your burial site at a cave with water in it would kind of would create more energy for spirits and stuff like that to be able to speak or talk or do anything like that.
Yeah, and I mean, through many, many different paranormal investigations or stories, they say that energy or water is very conducive to paranormal activity. Also, I believe they said that the Indian ritual would be to bury their dead above a cave because their spirit would have a easier time.
Yeah, like getting to the underworld.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, also, they say that if you're in the Bell Witch Cave and you're doing a tour, which you can tour the Bell Witch Cave, if you take a rock and take it home with you, she will haunt you. And a lot of people actually mail the rock. They'll take the rocks and then be like, oh, this is a joke. And they'll get home.
Mail them back.
Yeah, and bad things will happen. And they will mail them back with a long letter being like, please take this rock back. We took it. So many bad things are happening.
And a lot of them are really long apology letters about apologizing that they took the rock from the cave, not knowing that it would actually do that. So they send the rocks back with these long, sad stories of like what's happened, and that they're so sorry, and they don't want to have this like ever happen to them again, and that they just never thought that would ever happen. So that's kind of scary in itself.
Yeah, they think that because they send the rock back with this huge long apology that's going to stop the haunting. Usually, from what I've heard, it does not stop.
It doesn't stop for a while after that. It's just, and then it kind of shows like, you know, that Kate would be like doing stuff like that. She doesn't necessarily stop when everything is the way she wants it to be. It's just that she stops when she feels like it needs to stop, you know. And then that's the weird thing about her, is like most poltergeist stuff or anything like that, it doesn't do stuff like that. Like usually if you appease them in some way, they're fine and they move on. But a lot of this stuff with her is just that she actually killed John Bell.
Yeah.
And that's just really weird that a poltergeist had actually killed someone.
Yeah, I think that was the first one, and I think the only one ever, really, right?
Yeah, that I know of that's been documented, that he had been killed by a poltergeist.
Yeah.
The only one that's ever, that a spirit had actually killed a human being. So,
which is why I'm like terrified.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to even talk about it because, again, we live in Middle Tennessee. We are close to it. We are close to Adams, Tennessee, and not saying that just even talking, but still, I'll mess with that.
Adams is Springfield, Tennessee, I think.
I believe so.
Yeah, and I know a few people that are from Springfield, and it's just you never really think about like Adams, Tennessee, and then people being in Springfield, because that's really scary. It's just like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like this is a local haunting to us, but also they made what's the movie called?
American Haunting.
Yeah, so they made the movie American Haunting. This is one of the most notorious ghost stories, I believe.
Yeah, and like I didn't know much about it before I actually saw the movie, and when I saw the movie, it was actually like it kind of took me back a little bit, because I didn't realize that the Bell Witch had that much power, especially like even when there's the depictions of John Bell trying to take the witch and throw her in the fire and burn her, and he couldn't move because she got so heavy, he couldn't move and put her in the fire, which is terrifying. And in the movie, it's extremely terrifying. So like that's what is that. All of it is just really extremely terrifying. And we kind of passed this part, but on Ghost Adventures on season 10, episode 5, Aaron actually took a rock from the site, and he thought it was funny because Aaron likes to do this from time to time and thinks it's goofy. But I think from what I remember, it didn't work out very well, and he gave it back because he realized that was not a joke, and that the Bell Witch actually will mess with you, and it will not be good for you to do that at all, which is really scary because this witch is extremely powerful, and poltergeist is just so powerful. It's unreal how strong she is, that even things like that are like goofy, that most places it's like, don't do that, like you shouldn't do that, that when you do it nothing really ever happens. But with this, it's like so many people say something happens, and that's really, really scary and terrifying because it's so close to us, that we have something so paranormal so close to us, which hopefully we can be able to go there in the future.
Well, I mean, the thing is I've been told this story since, honestly, I was probably like 3 years old. I'm not even exaggerating. I've been told it many times, and my family know, my friends know. It's one thing that I usually don't ever talk on again because I'm so scared of it. And
you've always been terrified of it.
We're so close to it. But yeah, one day I think we might go. There is a campsite that actually literally sits on the Red River that is not part of like the Bell Witch Cave or the Bell Witch Tour, but you can rent a campsite and camp there. And I've had a few friends do that, and maybe one day we'll do it, but I'm scared.
And you're fine as long as you don't get, like, I know, and when I was watching Ghost Adventures, they were fine until they got toward the entrance of the cave.
Yeah.
And as you reach like a threshold, you like pass through it, and they just felt like different energy. So like usually with stuff like that, like you're fine as long as you don't reach that threshold and like pass it, you're fine. And as long as you're not doing anything that Bell Witch says do not do, which is like take anything from the ground, like you don't take anything from there. So usually you're fine as long as you don't take anything and you stay past that threshold, because there's just so much strong energy in there and stuff like that you don't want to really mess around with. Okay, and there was another story that kind of corresponds with John Bell trying to throw the Bell Witch into the fire and burn her, and she started weighing a lot, and it was hard for him to move her into the fire. And it has to do with Andrew Jackson going to the Bell farm to investigate. And it goes, as tales of the strange occurrences in Adams spread, General Andrew Jackson himself traveled from Nashville to Bell Farm to investigate. As Jackson approached the farm, the wheels of his wagon locked and no amount of effort by his horses or men could move the vehicle in spite of the fact that the ground was dry and level. A sharp mocking voice was heard laughing at their struggle. "All right, General," the disembodied voice said. "Let the wagon move on and I will see you again tonight." And just that, his wagon was really hard to move, and that she can almost make things weigh a lot more than they do. It's kind of scary, and it's Andrew Jackson, you know, like that's a big deal. That's like, it kind of just, it almost seems unreal that.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, it's really weird. This is like, it wasn't like a little thing. It was a big deal, and
right.
It
Didn't matter who it was.
Yeah, it didn't matter who
like
you
she
were.
was still gonna express her powers. You know, it didn't matter.
And that just kind of solidifies the realness of the stories, that like, it's Andrew Jackson. Like, it's not any normal person. It's like freaking Andrew Jackson. So that's the crazy part about the whole thing, is like little testimonials and stuff like this that we were able to find about the Bell Witch and any occurrences with other people. It's just really weird. It's just really scary and just strange, and like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because she's a witch and she's just got more power.
Well, and I mean, and maybe it could be because this story is so old. It's been told many times. So many people know about it. I've had so many people go to the Bell Witch Cave and the Bell Farm, and you know, they didn't take a rock, because most people don't do that, especially if you're from here. You know the legend, but they still feel this like overbearing feeling, just overwhelming, and
yeah.
I mean, it can be very scary. And I've a lot of people have asked me to go, and you know, one day maybe I'll work up the courage, but it's literally just too close to home. It's very scary.
And which is like, I've experienced the feeling of passing over like thresholds, like energy thresholds and stuff like that, and it's just
really?
Yeah, it's like at, you know,
oh yeah,
like in Georgia when I was at Jacqueline's grandmother's house. Her grandfather shot himself and went to go kill himself in the back bedroom that we slept in. So you can see the bullet hole, and you can see the blood on the ceiling, and it was just very weird. And I had to sleep with the lights on because it was like that bad.
Well, and I've been there at a separate time to that home, and it's definitely,
it's got a weird.
It's kind of like when you're like walking down the stairs, you feel like someone's behind you.
Yeah,
it's kind of like that feeling, like very eerie, very spooky.
And this was different because her grandmother, and this is off topic, but her grandmother was sitting in her bedroom, and then I was standing in the doorway, kind of outside the doorway, talking to her through the doorway and talking to her grandma, and like having a discussion about her Jacqueline's grandfather.
Yeah.
And it's about what he did and all this stuff and how he served and all this cool stuff. And then as I passed through the doorway to go into the bedroom to see my daughter, it got super heavy, like super duper heavy. Like, it felt like pressure was pushing down on me, and it felt like made me feel really, really sick and really nauseous, and I felt so super lightheaded, and it was just really scary. So stuff like that when you watch like Ghost Adventures and stuff like that, and they go to places and they're like, I don't feel good and I feel sick, that is like extremely overwhelming. Because it's so much energy that you're not used to being pumped into you or around you.
Oh, yeah,
it just makes you feel like, I almost felt like I couldn't even get out of the room.
That's scary.
And I felt sick to my stomach. But once I passed through the doorway, I started feeling better. And that just is really creepy. So things like this, like with the Bell Witch, she's just so powerful. Like, I can't even imagine what they went through and the pain and all of the craziness that happened. Because even in American Haunting, though, it was like terrifying seeing it like portrayed in real life. Like, watching Betsy get like tormented by the Bell Witch was like terrifying. Like, Kate was just messing with her so bad and just doing crazy stuff.
Well, and they don't say much in this version, but she did really I believe she really liked John Bell's wife, and she was very nice to her. She actually like whispered a lot of very nice things. She would sing she would sing her hymns to fall asleep, which
I kind of feel like that was because of the whole Joshua
Gardner.
Yeah, I feel like that was because of the whole, like, she had nothing Because Betsy was the one that dated Joshua,
Mm-hmm.
and that was the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's what I feel like. She was cool with John Bell's wife.
I just wonder why she had so much hatred towards John Bell in general. And that's why I think, like, I wonder if he took her land, you know.
Well, I feel like I always felt like it was because something about his land with hers, and on top of that, that Betsy was dating Joshua and Kate liked Joshua, and there was an issue there. And that was John Bell's daughter. So why not? Why wouldn't you have hatred toward her?
But why would you not have hatred towards the mother? Maybe it was wanted to be her.
Well, I mean, all that stuff is like a female thing, maybe. Because if you think about it, a daughter to father thing.
I mean, yeah, I understand that. Yeah, and usually it's a mother and a son thing, a father and a daughter thing. I could understand that.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's no telling. It could be all kinds of different things, like we said. Like, and that's where it's just crazy, because it's just really intense, so.
Yeah, I mean, there's many, if you want to, do your own research on it, look it up, see the different variations of the story. I mean, it can get pretty crazy and intense.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that come out in this that you can. There's all kinds of things. It's just crazy. There's a lot of crazy stories. There's a lot of really cool drawings, or really cool old school drawings, and like depictions of like the two-headed dog. The time that I believe it was John Bell actually he had a dream that he got turned into a donkey.
I believe so.
Yeah, like it's weird stuff like that. Like just really weird stuff. There's a lot of interesting stuff that you can find on it that we weren't able to actually cover in this.
Yeah, she did a lot to the family. This was not just like a few weeks and then it was done. I believe it was a few years.
Yeah, it's a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, daily hauntings, daily.
Utterly terrifying. Like,
I mean, the daughter was beaten.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure there was a time when that chair was thrown against the wall and broke.
I believe so. The only thing that I know that is not, like, very factual in the movie American Haunting is when, I guess, Betsy gets pulled down the stairs by the Bell Witch and her back is breaking. I don't believe there's any record of that, obviously. I don't even think the house was two-story. John Bell Jr.'s was, but I don't think the actual Bell family.
The house is, I believe, 2 stories.
Is it? Because I thought John Bell Jr.'s house was 2 stories.
Maybe it was John Bell's. But I know the Bell house, they show that online that you can find, is 2 stories.
Yeah, I think that's John Bell Jr.'s. I think I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the actual Bell family's house was only 1 story. But she does come back I think it's 107 years. So she still is supposedly haunts the Bell family. Every 107 years, she haunts the descendants.
In the cave.
The descendants.
And there was one account of a kid later on a few years ago or something. Mm-hmm. Or maybe it was in the 1920s. But there was a kid that actually had his hat picked up and thrown 20 feet into the air onto like a jutting out like rock outcrop so that he couldn't get it anymore. So the cave is very, 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 very charged spiritually. So like, if you ever go to the cave, it's good to just kind of tread lightly and be respectful.
And don't take a rock.
Yeah. There's they tell you to be very respectful because
they ask for you not to take a rock.
Yeah.
And
just understand that you're not in your element, and it's good to just kind of be cool with it and just be kind of respectful as much as you can, because that stuff, you never know, like that stuff could come back to haunt you for real.
Literally.
literally
back
come
to haunt you.
Yeah. Okay, that was the story of the famous Bell Witch. We appreciate you guys listening and being part of it. We plan on releasing episodes every Monday. It's all still in the works, so bear with us. We'll get it up and running and on a permanent schedule. So be sure to like and subscribe for more episodes in the future.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely like and subscribe. If you have any local scary stories you want us to cover, leave a comment down below so that we can hopefully retell them in the future.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to cover a lot of local stories, some that are not local, but if you have a story that you want us to tell, just comment below and we'll look into it and see what we can do.
What we're trying to do with this channel for the most part is we're trying to cover things that aren't really that are told for, like, some people come to you and tell you stories that, like, you've never heard of, like, like we've been told stuff that we're going to cover in the future that we can't talk about right now that we're, like, really freaking scary. Like extremely freaking scary, and like we think it's a joke and all that stuff, and then you look it up and you realize that it's a real story.
Yeah, and then it's even scarier.
Yeah, it's even scarier. So like we have a lot of cool stuff we're gonna bring to you guys in the future. We just we know that there's more local stuff, like there's stuff in New York. Like we're from Tennessee. We don't know the stories that are in New York. Like there's a few things that I found out from New York that were like scary, really scary stuff that I was just like, that is terrifying, and stuff that we just don't know about. So like if you guys have anything that you know of, like they were told as a kid in your city or in your little town or anything like that, just put it in the comments below, and that way we can do some research on it, or just even reach out to us and tell us a little bit about it so we can start creating an episode on that. Really cool.
and local to us, you know, is not the same thing as local to you. So that's why we want to hear about our local stories and your local stories. We just want to share them.
Yeah, and I think it'd be cool to get them out, because a lot of the stuff is interesting. Like you get told these stories and most people think it's a joke, but you find out that like everyone around you knows about that but you, and you're just like, what?
Yeah, exactly. We have one story coming up that that actually is true. You know, my brother Ryan here, he knew a lot about it, and I was like, wait, what? Because it's literally so close to us that I was like,
yeah, it's like it's literally like one county over from us, so it was pretty crazy. I was like, oh yeah, and this, and she's just like, what in the world? And I was like, yeah, you've never heard of that?
Yeah,
she's like, yeah, no, I've never heard of that.
Literally terrifying.
And I literally was able to bring it up on Google, and she thought it was like insane that was a real thing. And I've told people before that story, and they're like laughing about it, and they look it up and they're like, oh yeah, that's a real thing. Like what? So
yeah, and my boyfriend actually worked in the county a few years ago, and so I'm going to ask him about it eventually, if he, you know, just mention it to him and see if he's ever heard anything about it, because he doesn't believe in the paranormal, so I want to see his take on it, you know?
Yeah, so we're being really tight-lipped about all this stuff because we want to be able to make these things exciting and something fun to look forward to in the future in our episodes and stuff like that, to keep you guys sticking around for more stuff from us in the future. So
for sure.
Yeah.
But thank you guys for listening. Again, we really appreciate it. So just leave a like and comment below, and we'll get back to you.
Yeah, definitely. And don't forget to subscribe also.
Yeah.
And hit the bell so that you get updates for future episodes in the future.
Yeah, make sure our notifications are on. But we hope you have a good night, and we'll hopefully see you back very soon on a Monday.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. See ya.
Bye.